So my mom always taught me this phrase in Hebrew, lo im koach im moach. Sounds a little bit the same, koach and moach. Koach is strength, and moach is with your head. So she would say you should do things not with like strength, but with your head. So lo im koach im moach. It works better in Hebrew, trust me. But so this is the sort of like when you do something, you can do something in a nice way, pretty much. When you engage in a situation, you can enter it in a decent way and perhaps have a better outcome. Lo im koach im moach, not with strength, but with using your head. So our biblical character that we're going to be discussing the Shabbat could have learned this a little bit better. His name is Korach. And it's this week's Torah portion. It's called Korach. It's about this guy whose name is Korach. Good, excellent. You're with me. Excellent. Just want to make sure we're all on the same page, literally. So Korach is a Levite, as were Moses and Aaron. Right? Moses and Aaron were brothers, and so it made sense. Good. So they're Levites, and so they wake up in the morning essentially, and they decide they don't like how Moses is doing things, and so they get two of their buddies, these two guys' names Datan and Aviram, and they go and they pretty much knock on Moses' tent, along with 250 men behind them, and say, "We don't like the way you're doing these things. And we want to change it, essentially." And so they, Korach, along with Datan and Aviram, and 250 men, decide it's sort of like a mutiny. They want to take over the ship, essentially. And so they do it in a not very nice way. They're very threatening. When Moses tries to reason with them, they don't want to talk to him. There's a whole section where Moses calls to Datan and Aviram to actually say, "Let me talk to you guys, because maybe you can talk some sense into your buddies so that we don't have to have these issues." And they actually say to him, "We're not coming to talk to you." It actually says it in the Torah. We're not coming to talk to you. No. Is that an inflection too with the hand motion? They did it in the Bible. No. All right. So it sets up a bad situation for Moses and for Aaron, and so there is this revolt. And there's this issue that Moses is having with Korach, and I think that perhaps for Moses it's the most hurtful because they're from the same tribe. Literally, they're both Levites, so it's really uncomfortable. I will not give you the outcome because you have to come to Torah study tomorrow morning at 8:45 to find out what happens when they throw down and when they brawl. But I'll tell you, it's a serious brawl. And it's a serious fight, but you'll have to wait. So 8:45, I expect to see every single one of you. 8:45, maybe with some donuts or whatever you want to bring for me or anyone else. It's fine. Donuts, cake would be something like a little coffee. So the seriousness of the situation is how they do it. There's a way to do something, right? Lo im koach im moach, not with your fists, but with your head. And there's a way to take care of things, and he doesn't do that. And I'll just tell you, it's not the most fabulous ending. It's a very complicated, very difficult ending to the story. Even though it's a little light about them fighting, it's a very complicated. It's very, very complicated, and it's because the way that he does it is not done with the best intentions. And so I think it's interesting that Korach falls into this week particularly because, as we know, if you're watching the news, things are not going well in terms of revolts and violence in our world. It is not going well. It's quite ugly, in fact. Just if we turn to the recent couple of days regarding the police, and with different complicated conversations regarding Black Lives Matter or any shootings and police. If you know what happened in Dallas with 12 officers shot, five of them murdered, 5 of them died. The situation in Baton Rouge with Alton Sterling, and in St. Paul with Philando Castile. And so there is this complicated situation going on in our world. There is some violence. There is some violence, like there is in our text this week. It's just, I think, a matter of how we do things. What's the dialogue? There is an issue. It's a complicated issue. We're not going to solve it in our conversation right now. It's not going to go away. It seems like it's not being fixed in any way. And so I will invite us to sort of think about lo im koach imoach, not with your fist but with your head. I wonder if the interesting balance of what's happening this week and what's happening this week for us in our Torah finds this space where we can really connect in different and maybe positive ways, possibly. And so obviously things need to change. And so I think the triple irony, so the fact that it's Korach this week, the fact that unfortunately there is so much violence going on and watching the headlines of all the news that we're watching, the biggest irony, I think, is that this week, as a Jewish people, as a gigantic Jewish people, we lose Elie Wiesel. On top of all of this, very interesting, if you think about playing out this week, this very complicated, very difficult week where Korach falls this week onto us, and to have on July 2nd, to have Elie Wiesel die, who I imagine you know, was perhaps the smartest, most eloquent connector for us to discuss the Holocaust. Perhaps. I will say that. I'm actually distantly related. I'm actually related to Simon Wiesenthal, actually. And my wife is related to Elie Wiesel. And so through our marriage, we feel like we connected Elie Wiesel and Simon Wiesenthal through our marriage. And so it's interesting, the juxtaposition of the violence on the headlines, the violence in our Torah portion, and how Elie Wiesel consistently said, this is not the way to do anything. This is not the path. And to hear it from that man, who could have said anything he wanted, pretty much any time he wanted, and people would have listened to him for what his life was like. It's fascinating that this pieces together for us in terms of maybe we should think about what he says. Maybe we should approach things not like Korach, but like what Elie Wiesel would say in these certain situations. And I have 2 quotes for you. There are millions of them. And if you do not know them, you should check on them on this Shabbat. If you've not read the book Night, he's written many books and many articles and given many lectures, but Night perhaps is the one that stands out the most. It's a deceptively small book. It's a very small book with it's a very heavy book, but a very small book. And so he says, we must take sides, he says. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. It's Elie Wiesel. Falling this week for us, with Korach, with what's happening in the news. And his other quote, no human race is superior. No religious faith is inferior. All collective judgments are wrong. Only racists make them. I'll read that one again. No human race is superior. No religious faith is inferior. All collective judgments are wrong. Only racists make them. So on this week, I invite us on this Shabbat to reflect on Korach, to reflect on the news, and sprinkle this Jewishness that we feel in the room, that we have as a Jewish community, and sprinkle the brilliance of the writing and the saying and the life of Elie Wiesel into maybe how we can frame not just this week, but frame many things in our lives to think about from his perspective. And so the last thing I want to say is one more quote from Elie Wiesel, and that's how we can end our little chat tonight. So as we move into Shabbat, this last quote: "The opposite of love is not hate; it's indifference." Shabbat shalom.